Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we are solving count binary substring. So we will be given an input string called s, and we want to return the number of non-empty substrings that have the same number of zeros and ones. And the zeros and ones of these substrings need to be grouped consecutively for it to be counted. So if you look at this example, it will be 6 because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. In this example, it will be 4 because it will be one substring here, one substring here, one substring here, and one substring here. So we return 4. So now that we have seen some examples, let's get to how we can solve this problem. So to solve this problem, we should acknowledge that the number of substrings in a sequence of consecutive zeros and ones will always be the lesser between the number of zeros and number of ones. So if we look here, since they're both 3, there will be 3 substrings, which will be this has equal zeros and ones, and this has equal zeros and ones. And for this one, since 0 is less than ones, it will be 2 of them. So it will be this and this. So now that we know that, we can use that to solve this problem. So what we can do is set result to 0, previous to 0, and the current to 1. So current can represent the number of zeros or ones, and same for previous, and they will alternate as we iterate through the array. So we will iterate from index 1 to end. So that's why we set current to 1. And we will check if the current character is equal to the previous one. If it is, then we are continuing the sequence of number of zeros or number of consecutive ones, whichever it is, we increase the current by 1. Now if they are different, then we will add the minimum of current or previous to the result that we initialize here. After we do that, we need to set previous to current because now zeros and ones are alternating, and then we set current to 1 because the new sequence would be started at 1. And finally, after iterating to the end, we will need to add current and previous to result again, because let's say we have this. When we are here, it will add this. When we are here, it will add it here. When we are here, it's unequal again, so it will add it here. But when we are here, we are at the end, so we need to make sure we add the lesser between current and previous again to result to get the correct result. And after that, we can return result. So let's go over this example real quick. Initialize previous to 0, current to 1, result to 0. Start at index 1. It's the same as the previous, so increase current by 1. Now that it is different from the previous, we will increase result by the lesser of the two, which is 0. So result is still 0, but now we need to set previous to current, and we will set current to 1. Now move on to the next one. Same as previous, so increase current by 1. Now that they are different, so we add the minimum of the 2 to result, which is 2. So now result is 2. Now we set previous to 2 because current is 2, and current will now be 1 because 0 is 1 and previous 1 has 2 of them. So move on to the next one. Current is 2, previous is 2. Now the previous is not equal, so we add the minimum of the 2, which is 2. So now result is 4. We need to set current to 1, and now the previous is 2 because current is 2. Current is 1. Move on next one. Current is now 2. And now that we have come to the end, we will need to do the calculation one more time, as I was saying up here. So we will add by 2, which now result is 6, and we can return 6 as our result. And the time complexity would be O of n, where n is the length of the string because that's the number of characters we will have to iterate through. And the space complexity would be O of 1 because the size of these variables will not depend on the length of the string. So the space is constant. So now let's get to the coding part. So first we initialize result to 0, previous to 0, and current to 1. Now we will iterate from index 1 to the end. So for I in range 1 to length of s, we'll check if the character is not equal to the previous character. If that is the case, then we will update the result by adding the minimum between the previous or current. So previous and current will be 0 or 1s. Now we need to set previous to current and current to 1. Otherwise, if they're equal, increment current by 1. And finally, we will need to update the result one last time because of the case I was talking about earlier. And finally, we can return result. See if it works. Okay, perfect. Hope this was helpful. Thank you all for watching. If you have any other questions or comments, feel free to leave them down in the comment section, and I hope to see you all again soon.